And the pharmacy is open once again. This time it's open on my birthday, as Pharmaceutical Soccer is here with more than one person this time to talk about all the news going on in the Nashville SC world. Clay Trainham, joined again by Valair Shavilla. Steven is out. Steven is just mortified that the Indiana Hoosiers are playing for a national championship next week, so he has decided that he does not want to be on the show. Valair has lots of thoughts about college football, and we'll get through those thoughts right now before we get to the NSC. Valair, what do you think about the national championship game?
Man, I love me some Blue Raiders and Lipscomb Bisons, and I know Vanderbilt's
Noted
not in
football
it.
powers.
Yeah. The big football names, that we all know and love. Shout out
Well, to be fair, the Hoosiers are the losingest program, or were the losingest program in the history of college football. So
I did hang out with Clay during the New Year, like New Year's Eve, and there was a football game on, and I want to say that was Ole Miss.
it was Miami versus Ohio State.
Oh, never mind. I had that wrong. Yes, it wasn't I did see that. I saw that. I saw like at least a touchdown from that game, which I believe Miami won.
Yes, they did, because there was someone else with us that was wearing a Columbus,
Yes,
Ohio shirt
that's what
and was sad.
prompted this whole situation. Okay. See, that's the extent of my knowledge. Thank you all for the college football education. I think that's enough for me.
All right. And so, moving on from football, Blair, how was your weekend?
Yeah, it was an interesting one. It was got to get back to the Nashville SC training ground, as Taylor Washington likes to call it, the Avengers complex. It does kind of look like that from the outside, actually, as you walk in. So I was thinking about that the other day. Yeah, and just been just hanging out with some friends, and nothing too crazy this weekend. After all the holidays and all that stuff, and then my birthday's coming up. Gotta make sure I stay pretty low key for a weekend. Clay, what did you do? How are you celebrating your? I'm assuming 26, right? 26th year.
Yeah. Longtime listeners know that I've always been the oldest person on this show, and I have now entered my 40th year, so I'm 39 now. And we're gonna go out to eat tonight, but we did some board games at the house. But mostly, we just celebrated the Hoosiers going to the national title game. Watched a little bit of Blue Raider women's basketball, and kept it fairly low key as we get ready for Nashville soccer season. I will say this: you mentioned the Avengers complex. I did watch the first Iron Man yesterday. I
Ooh, so
don't know
good,
why,
so good.
but I was like compelled. So I hadn't watched that in so long, and now, all right, this we're starting off with we're starting off with tangents that have nothing to do with soccer. So when I was a kid, Iron Man was my favorite, and it was weird for someone my age. Like, Iron Man was not a popular comic book,
Right.
and my favorite on DC was Green Arrow, who was also not a popular comic book hero. And it's still so strange to me as an adult that both of those comic book heroes are
They're
A-listers.
like the poster
It would
child
never be
of
weird,
their
not weird
of
to
their
me.
franchise. Yeah, they're like the
Yeah.
hero of the franchise. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so strange to me because when I was a kid, no one else liked those guys, or it wasn't their favorite. It's Superman, Batman. Like, Arrow had like so many seasons on TV, and Iron Man's got. I mean, the MCU is insane. But
Yeah.
we've done lots of MCU theme shows on here, especially several years ago. So
Mhm.
we don't have to dwell on it. We can
Well,
dwell on the fact that the Nashville Soccer Club is assembling its own team of heroes at the front of the attack, as announced last week.
yeah, I guess this is just like when they went and recruited, who would it be, Hulk? Yeah, when they went to India to get Bruce Banner, you know, that's kind of,
Yeah.
and I saw a GIF of Espinoza and Hani going like head to head back like in 2021 or 2022 when San Jose and Nashville played, and there is a scene of the Avengers where they're all arguing with each other, and this. I think this is as far as this analogy goes. Clay, what was your reaction to Espinoza signing?
Okay, so I'm in two minds about it, right? And I think this will be a little bit surprising. So Espinosa is absolutely the the prize of the free agent market in MLS this year. Like that's who you wanted. That's who everybody wanted. He instantly makes your team better, and it's somebody that Nashville needed. You know, someone that can get goal contributions consistently, and did so in a team not nearly as good as Nashville's team. And so that's the whole like super positive approach that I have for it. And that is where I mostly lie. I'm like 90% on that side. But there's like the 10% of me that remembers the last time Nashville got the best available free agent. And uh who wasn't a bad player, but remember when Sean Davis signed?
I do. I do.
And it was universally applauded around the league like that's a Nashville guy that he'll fit perfect. And that's there's like 10% of me that remembers that. Now, different times, different eras, different players. It's not fair. There's basically nothing in common with the situations here. But, you know, I do remember when it seemed like Nashville made a universally applauded signing like it has been with Espinoza. And that was something that didn't work out. And so that's the little needling that's in, that's in my I just can't get rid of. But
And
for the most part, like the vast majority, I'm very excited about his signing. I think he fits in well. I think he brings a lot of things that Nashville needed, and I think he brings versatility, which Nashville's also looking for. With a lot of players, they like guys that can kind of move around a little bit and fill in and play in different roles, even if they're lining up at a particular role at the start of the game. They tend to shift guys around a little bit to see if they can get a new look somewhere, and Espinoza can do that. And I do I do think like it's a great sign that he wanted to play in Nashville. There were
yeah.
plenty of other opportunities and places to go. This is a guy who wanted to come to Nashville, which is a pretty like that's a good thing to have on your side if that's your reputation around the league.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean there are a lot of differences between Sean Davis and Christian Espinoza. Don't get me wrong, but I would say an attacker is a little bit different than a midfielder, and it's a it's
Yeah,
that's really the
it's a
big
situational thing.
yeah
It's just a situational thing. It has
yeah
nothing to do with, like I said, entirely different situations. But it's just like, the last time I remember being everyone being this universally excited about a signing.
yeah. So going off of that, we had the chance to speak to Christian Espinoza for his sort of introductory press conference, and I thought he was saying all the right things. You know, he seems very excited to be here. He seems like an excited to play in the BJ Callahan style. And I thought one thing that, I asked him, well, why did you choose Nashville? And without hesitation, the first thing he said is the coach. He said, I spoke to BJ Callahan. He said, he liked what he heard in terms of the style of play, in terms of what this team stands for, or what this team builds. And I think the other stuff is kind of out there to see. It's, you can see that Hani Mukhtar and Sam Surridge scored 40 goals combined last year. I think you don't need to speak to anyone to know that. You can see that. He had seen Nashville before. He said he had talked to Andy Nahar during the All-Star game, for example. So he had other indications as well about this team, and I think he was, he when free agency hits, and now that MLS is starting to have a real free agency process, like the other leagues. These things are very important. What other players are saying, word goes around the league. What other players are saying, how the coach speaks, taking them to a Preds game. I mean, the deal was sealed before the Preds game, but these things matter a lot. And I think when the reputation is of Nashville being a great city for families to live, I think that's a very important thing, especially for a guy with two young kids. Uh, but then after that, okay, the family's taken care of. We're good. You're going to get a salary because for him, San Jose were the only team able to offer him more than everybody else. And then everybody other than San Jose, if he wanted a change of scenery, is going to be at least 10%, I believe, lower. So the money was there because a lot of these MLS teams would give him that max that they can offer him. Outside of MLS, I don't know if many teams would have offered him this much money, and maybe they have. And again, but there's a family involved. There's a wife. There are kids. These are not
And
decisions you just
I
make
mean,
based on your career.
and let's put it on Front Street. There's no state income tax in Tennessee.
And there's no state income tax. So whatever that 10% is, that was probably what he was paying in California for state income tax. So all that considered, I think him choosing to be in Nashville, most of it had to do on the pitch and what BJ Callahan said and what Mike Jacobs said, which he mentioned both of those people, but also with what happens with Nashville as an organization, as a city. And I think those are things that wouldn't have been said about the Nashville organization if BJ Callahan wasn't here, to be honest. And the second thing is, I don't think these things would have been said about Nashville as a city maybe 15 years ago. So things are changing all around. And I think at the end of the day, money is probably the most important thing, but these other decisions do matter, and they've definitely played a part here. And that's why Christian Espinosa is here, and that's why Nashville has a third DP.
So breaking news from Valair Shavilla, money over everything. That's the way he approaches.
I mean, I've heard every rap song out there. I know what I'm talking about.
the
Uh,
I do find the signing interesting. I think a lot of us were expecting maybe to go that young player route,
mhm.
the U22 route. So it caught me off guard a little bit, but then I think I've come to the realization, and I'm sure this is the case, the U22 route is great unless you can sign Christian Espinosa, who's an immediate, seal or floor lifter, essentially. Like the floor for Nashville with him is so much higher than probably it would be having to bleed young players in
Yeah,
and maybe getting your peak form towards the end of the season. You can start off with a better squad and then maybe, evaluate as time goes on because ultimately Nashville's three DPs are around their prime ages. And so you can try and say this is a win now window. You got a couple years with these guys playing at the peak of their game. Let's see what you can get here.
yeah, and with the raising the floor, I think that's something that both Mike and BJ mentioned as well at the press conference. They they talked about how they're raising the floor with young players that Nashville have signed. So there are these players, right? Your Thompson who came in at center back, Lafleur who came in at midfield. These players came in and are immediately going to be hungry and fighting for minutes. And we'll talk about this other guy, Madrigal as well, Warren Madrigal. These are players who are effectively replacing Teal Bunbury. If you go a few years back, replacing maybe a Dax McCarty or these sort of older players who have been moved on from, and now these young players are going to take over. Not saying that the old players are didn't serve Nashville or weren't good or whatever it may be, but there is a hunger within the young players who are trying to prove something that just doesn't exist as much as for somebody like Teal Bunbury, for example. So when you look at the prospect of the, let's say, 500 to 1,000 minutes that Teal Bunbury would have occupied in MLS for Nashville SC, and you replace that with a Costa Rican national teamer, I think that really changes what Nashville SC's floor is. I think that really puts it in perspective of where Nashville SC ranks within that. And then same thing with the wingers, right? When you're, no disrespect to Jacob Schaffelberg and Tyler Boyd, but when you replace that with a Christian Espinoza now fighting for these wing spots with these other wingers that Nashville SC already have, that really does raise the floor here. So I think it's a lot of raising the floor in a lot of positions. It seems like they're doing that through young players who are hungry, who they'll sign 4 or 5 of them, and maybe 1 or 2 will stick around, and the other ones, that's the business. But that's how you get a guy like Matt Corcoran fighting for spots. That's how you get a guy like Josh Bauer, even if you think about it. Josh Bauer when he came into Nashville was only 22, and now he's maybe even younger actually. Now he's sort of a presence in the first team. So these are the sort of signings that really makes me think that the BJ Callahan project is going in the right direction. And then both BJ and Mike, I think in their talking points. And by the way, go to 615soccer.com or on our YouTube channel, and you can see the entire press conference. And I think it's worth your time, honestly. Both Christian, uh, BJ, and Mike, and everything they said. But I think one thing that was very easy to detect from that press conference is that they're hungry for more. They're going to be wanting to win more, and I think Nashville are very lucky. The Nashville fans are very lucky that this change and this transition in coaching went as smoothly as it has been, and that's largely thanks to both Mike Jacobs and BJ Callahan. So, all things considered, I think Nashville in a really good position going into 2026.
Uh, so I want to circle back to this winger point that you brought up because I think it's interesting. The First off, obviously with Schaffelberg moving, I think that that's an example of maybe a player that you didn't see the potential fulfilled in Nashville. Like there was a lot there that you thought, but maybe it was just time to move on and give someone else a shot. And I think we're going to see those types of things happen with a lot of these players because not every signing is going to be
Yeah,
a success. There's going to be some that don't work, but the proof will be in having them actually play and seeing what you got there. And then if it doesn't work out, maybe you go get a Christian Espinosa who can take you to the next level. I do think that I'm very, very excited to see this season from Ahmed Qasim.
yeah,
I think that we have seen guys like him come in and maybe have an up and down or frustrating first year in MLS, and he he didn't transition as smoothly as some of the other signings last year did to playing regularly. And I really think that the way that this offseason has played out is a vote of confidence in what he can bring to Nashville. I'm That's the one. Like if like I said, you're not going to hit on every winger, right? But if that is a hit, and we see the type of sophomore year jump from him that we've seen from other players of a similar profile in MLS, you've now got an attacking group of players
yeah.
that is as good as anybody that isn't Miami, essentially. Uh, as good as the rules allow, the best attacking, you know, I don't know. I'm going over my skis a little bit with the Miami accusations there, but I think that that does turn into a hit this year, you are now looking at three potentially successful wing players attacking wise. I mean, Alex Muyl is more successful than he gets credit for, but he's there for versatility more than anything else. But if Perez, we've seen a lot from Perez, especially that little blue stretch in the purple stretch there in the middle of the season. But if Qasim comes through, Espinosa, now that's a lot of scoring that you could potentially have there. That could really, really change the outlook of Nashville's season.
Yeah, and ultimately, what I would say for Perez and Qasim as well is that Espinoza is 30, and if you can build up your resume in the next year or two with Nashville SC, this could be your team going forward if you become that guy. And it's more likely now that people are getting DP contracts from within, right? We saw it with guys like Jordan Morris, for example, and stuff like that. So I think there's an opportunity not just to get a move abroad, which might be in the plans for these guys, but also to become the guy for Nashville SC. You don't just become that guy by, you know, competing with, but by let me rephrase it. You don't just become that guy by just giving you a starting spot and then letting you fail over and over and over again. No, you become that guy by competing for it and winning that starting spot. And look, who knows? Maybe this season Christian Espinosa is the starter, and then next season Ahmed Qasim or Perez takes over because they play better, and then they're learning now from Christian Espinosa. Maybe there's a good, healthy competition between all three of those that really brings out the best out of these people. So I think all things considered, like when it comes to the amount of games that Nashville SC are going to play, the amount of players they have, it is very safe to assume that everybody's going to get a shot to prove themselves. especially in those winger spots. And I think that will bring out the best out of people. And I think that will kind of maybe not answer questions. Like I don't want to be like, oh, that's it. Like if this next season for Perez is not good, then he's never gonna come good. But what we can say for sure is that Nashville SC are doing their due diligence to get the players in to compete for trophies. And we can't really like look at that roster and say, oh, that wing position is weak or that striker position is weak. We can't say that anymore because I think what Nashville SC did this offseason is address those issues, which we have said at times, not Sam Surridge is weak or the wingers themselves are weak, but as a group, as an attacking group, there were two players who were productive, and everybody else had a little bit of a patch, and that was that. So in attack, I think what they have done so far in attack specifically has been even above and beyond what I expected, honestly, because I didn't expect them to go and get somebody like Christian Espinosa.
Yeah, and just I think you mentioned it, and I was actually gonna bring that up to follow up, but you already got there. I think thinking about Seattle in the way that their attack has been built over the last
Yeah.
what 12 years,
Yeah.
where they've kind of transitioned from guys that weren't DP players to being some of their most important players, like a Jordan Morris. Like that's a team that went from strength to strength several times over and continued to compete.
Yeah.
Partially because they were making good signings from overseas. That's the reason that they went out after Hani Mukhtar before Nashville did. I mean, because they were looking for guys that they thought could work there, and also brought them up from within. I mean, Morris, I guess, technically comes from the college ranks, but we all know like his dad's the athletic trainer at Seattle. Like he's very much of Seattle. So I do think like thinking about a team like Seattle, like just because they aren't a DP player right now, and maybe don't seem that doesn't mean that 2 years from now they
Right.
might not be. And I think that that's a really good way of looking at some of these younger players. There's every chance that they might not be. There's every chance that they get dealt, and halfway through the season because they're not up to snuff. But there's every chance that like Owaledzi is the best center back in the league. There's every chance that Kasim takes a step forward, and these aren't things that seem outside the realm of possibilities. They're things that happen in this league quite frequently, especially at well-run clubs. So moving on from there, because it's a lot of what ifs and a lot of this could happen, this might happen. Camp has opened, and so players are training, players are getting ready for the season. Not all players are training though,
Yes.
so a couple things to keep an eye out on as we move these first few weeks. Nothing that seems particularly long term, but you want to address that real quick,
Yeah,
Blair?
Madrigal is still in Costa Rica at the moment, trying to work out his visa to bring him back into Nashville. Well, I guess into Florida actually, where they are based for a few weeks now. And once that happens, he'll be integrated with the team, obviously. And then Hani Mukhtar did not travel with the team because he has the flu and he's quarantining. We were told by Mike Jacobs that he's probably going to be flying out on Monday, which is today, day of recording, rather than Sunday with everybody else. But he was just kind of going to do his own thing. Obviously, you don't want it to spread around. And we'll join the team in no time. Everybody else, the full list of everybody who participated in preseason is available at 615 Soccer, so you can go and take a look there. Um, there are some trialists. There are some names from around the league who are working out with the team. Who knows? Maybe they'll get a signing. Maybe they'll get a contract. Maybe they won't. But at the end of the day, I think last year Sony Mitchell or Sony Michel, is it Michelle? I think it's Michelle. Sony Michel was training with Nashville SC. He didn't end up getting a contract, but like Tate Schmidt came in and trained for Nashville SC and got a contract. So who knows? But those two are the only two sort of first team players who aren't with the team currently. But I assume both of them will be back with the team sooner rather than later. And this first week of preseason is not even training; it's just conditioning, I guess you can call it. It's let's run, let's make sure you're in good shape, let's make sure you're eating right, and let's see where we're at.
Shout out to trialist legend Genki Miyachi.
Ah, what a guy.
And with that, we're going to send it to our first, I guess, probably our only break this week. And we'll be back to talk a little bit more about this roster construction and a few little news and notes from around Nashville SC. You're listening to Pharmaceutical Soccer. Clay Trenum back again with Pharmaceutical Soccer, joined by Valair Shabilla. If you're listening to this and want to leave us a review, please leave a 5-star review at Apple Podcasts. If you leave a 5-star review, we will read it on air. So what you can do is go write a review about how much Chelsea sucks
Mhm.
as Stephen Robinson, and then Stephen will read it,
I would say
provided that he
actually
comes back to
not
us
just
well.
Chelsea. You can talk about how much he hates metal music. Um,
University of Michigan.
University of Michigan, he does hate University of Michigan a lot. So yeah, any
Yeah,
of those.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will have Steven read it. So especially what you can talk about is his love of Chattanooga FC. He's a CFC
Mm,
both ways. He loves Chelsea, he loves Chattanooga. Talk about that, and we will have him read it. And it's quite interesting that he talks so much about Chattanooga FC, as he may be on loan with them this season, like a lot of Nashville players.
yes. I guess we're starting the second segment with the biggest news out here, huh? Isaiah Jones, uh, the the second homegrown for Nashville SC to ever sign contract with the first team, is going on loan to the Chattanooga Red Wolves. That is um, no, that is not it. I just said the wrong team. I am so sorry. Shout out Steven. He got me all yeah. No, Chattanooga FC. Sorry. The blue one. CFC. They're gonna hate me. Oh, nobody's listening to this from Chattanooga, I'm assuming. Well, they
Other
might
than
be from
Steven.
Chattanooga, but they're not.
Steven's the only Chattanooga fan that listens.
Yeah, Steven is, right? Is that what I said?
Yeah.
But yeah, so Isaiah Jones kind of struggled to get any actual first team minutes. He played a little bit under Rumba Muntali when he was the interim coach. Been in and out of the Huntsville squad, not an everyday starter. So getting his shot at a team maybe away from the organization, sending him not too far, but still being able to keep an eye on him within the same league, see if there's any future there for him. So that's kind of the first piece of news we're going through. The other one, which we kind of alluded to earlier on, is that Nashville SC have waived Tyler Boyd. You know, he's been part of Nashville SC. He came in. He was the highest paid player who's not a DP with Nashville um, when he was waived. So similar move to what we saw from Leal last season. Unfortunately for Boyd, it's more about injury and being unlucky than anything else. I think without that injury, everybody could see how talented he was, and everybody saw a chance for him to be a big part of Nashville SC. But unfortunately, with the injury, you just can't keep a player like this on your roster taking up that space when they can't perform to that level. I'm assuming he's going to clear the waiver wire, and then a team will sign him. So once a team signs him, after the waivers have finished. Once the team signs him, Nashville SC will still be on the hook for his salary. However, he will be off the books, and the other team can pay him pretty much just the senior minimum, which will be like 100K or something like that. And that's what happened with Leal last year with DC. While Nashville SC, while John Ingram will still be paying his salary, Nashville SC will not keep that on the record. So it allows for Nashville SC to have another town player. Also, it allows them to have that sort of GAM moving in and TAM moving in to where to cover a little bit of these other non DP contracts. So
Yeah, it's more about resource allocation than talent.
yeah,
Ultimately, Tyler Boyd is getting starter wages while not being a starter. And that's the easiest way of describing it. And if that was going to be the case, there's really no reason when you've got cash constraints in this league to be spending money in those spots. And so, good luck to him. I think that he could have added to Nashville's attack, but I don't think I think Nashville's going to be fine. I think it wasn't quite the it wasn't worth the risk financially when you've lost a lot in other places and you have places that you need to bolster. I mean, there are still a lot of a lot of senior spots left in the squad and positions that seemingly are not yet filled.
Yeah, and with that being said, Warren Madrigal is now official. I think last time we talked about him in the last show, he wasn't official yet. Again, he's a 21-year-old Costa Rican national team player. Has experience. He went to Spain with Valencia a little bit and came back. BJ Callahan said he had a lot of knowledge on him based on studying the Costa Rican national team with his time with the USMNT. Because BJ was obviously part of the assistant coach staff there and did their homework on Costa Rica. So Madrigal would always come up. I think, yeah, I think what we talked about in the first segment about him taking the Teal Bunbury minutes is true. However, he can also play a little bit more of a creator and out wide possibly as well. So you might see him and feature all across the front line. Um, I also think there is a very, very good chance that he will play more than Teal Bunbury played last year, more meaningful minutes. There's a way for him to be involved with Sam Sturridge. I don't think it's either or. So there's a lot of moving parts here, but I think this might go under the radar as a signing just because the name he kind of had hit his high points in his career and now his quote unquote lower points in his career as well. However, like we were talking earlier in the first segment, he's 21 years old, meaning that it's other teams in Europe might have given up on him, but that doesn't mean he's a bad player and that he won't improve. So a lot of potential there for him to come to his own with Nashville SC.
Uh, he could be Joel Campbell. He could be.
Could be Joel Campbell. That's a name. Holy yes, love me a Joel Campbell, man.
uh, I was trying to think of other named Costa Rican forwards, and that's all I could come up with.
Randall Leal. He could be a Randall Leal.
Well, I meant in Europe, of course. Obviously, I know other ones. There's a lot of them in MLS.
So
Uh,
Clay, let me ask you this, since I've been kind of yapping for a minute here. Like when you look at this roster, it's obviously filling up. I think the attack is fairly full at this moment. What other sort of positions will you be going for? Because we know for a fact Nashville SC are going to make more signings. There's still a lot of room in the
yeah,
roster. Where would you go next?
we we need to see more work done on the back four.
Yeah,
I mean, all across. Now, there is potential for Espinosa to play in like a right wing back. He's done that before. That would probably be a back three, back five situation. Nashville doesn't really have, I don't think, enough to do that in terms of center back signings because they've got a good first three, but you need a little bit more options there. That's no disrespect to Josh Bauer, but there is a gap after the first three. Waledzy's a huge signing, of course. I'm not fully convinced they won't be looking around for a spot for mayor elsewhere and opening up some money. I think at this point it's pretty locked on that mayor is going to be in the squad. But that was my bold prediction, and I
right.
still think that there's a decent chance that teams are going to get into camp and be a little bit worried about their center back spot and may call up Nashville about a mayor who I don't know is a locked in starter next year or this year, I guess I should say. And so I think you definitely need at least one more center back through those doors. You definitely need fullbacks, both spots
Um,
uh, to feel comfortable. You've got guys who can deputize at both fullback spots, but you don't have out and out fullbacks with a lot of MLS minutes outside of your starters. And let's be really honest, for that right back, like Andy Nahr had his healthiest season that he's ever had. And what are the odds of two of those in a row
right.
on the basis of his career? I would have to think, I love Andy Nahr. I've been a fan of Andy Nahr. We've talked about it on the show since he was a teenager playing in MLS, but that is not someone who is like the healthiest guy over the course of his career. I think you need a real option to play in his role. And we saw what happens when Dan Lovitz goes down, and then your backup to Dan Lovitz goes down. This past season. I mean, Nashville's slide is sort of in that right after the second third of the season, kind of before the home stretch. Nashville had a real slide, and that had a lot to do with lack of fullback depth. And I don't think we've seen enough moves there. I do think that there are moves that are going to happen that just haven't happened yet, but that's the blinking light to me that they're waiting on. I think that this squad, healthy, can compete near the top of the league. I think even with a few injuries, they're good enough to compete. You know, but they need something there because it'll feel real thin real quick
And I
if some
think
injuries happen on that back line.
when I was talking about the wingers and maybe even Madrigal and all these players coming in at a younger age and maybe being the understudy, if you would, to the DP player. This is kind of a similar situation here when you have a 34-year-old left back and a 32-year-old right back. These are positions that require a lot of pace. These are positions that requires a lot of physicality. And Dan Lovitz, credit to him. I mean, he's one of the most physically sound players in that squad. So I don't want to like use his age against him or anything like that, but a little bit of succession planning here makes a whole lot of sense. So maybe you don't get in the guy who is ready to start right away, but someone who will at least give him a little bit of a push. And I think same thing with Andy Nahar. With all respect to Josh Bauer, he was a center back playing and backing up right back and left back at one point. And I don't think either Andy Nahar or Dan Lovitz felt like that was an actual competition for their position. I think they both knew that they are the starting fullbacks. I think what you want is somebody who can come in and have that hunger in him, somebody who is not only young and hungry, but is also experienced a little bit. He doesn't have to be a starter day one. He can be a starter next season, and so on and so forth. When Dan Lovitz is 35, maybe you bring him in on a different contract, whatever it may be. But there has to be some succession planning here, and that starts this season. And then next season is really you reevaluate and see if you do need to get that sort of star player to replace one of those fullbacks, or the succession plan worked well and he's taken over. So I think that's kind of the main thing to keep in mind here. And I do suspect that Nashville SC will make more defensive signing. I do think one other area that you haven't mentioned, Clay, is center mid. I think there's an opportunity there for more of a creative player rather than somebody who covers a lot of ground, which Nashville SC need. I think Patrick Kasbach and Eddie Taxeth are most likely going to start most games for Nashville SC. I do think having
I don't.
you don't think so.
Um, I I think that, well, again, you are more connected to this than I am, and so I'm fully acknowledging that. But what we just talked about a few minutes ago about maybe looking at guys as where they'll be a couple years from now versus where they are right now, I think that there's a real chance that they think Corcoran is going to be a regular out there in center, playing in the central midfield. Um, I don't know that that's going to be the case, but I mean, they gave him minutes in big games last year, and so he might be who they're hoping to see a lot out of this year. And that is, I do think they need it. Obviously, you need backups. Like, of course, I'm not saying that, but I feel like they're kind of telegraphing that they're going to be using him a lot more by some of the signings that they made or didn't make coming into camp. That's where I fall on it.
I think that's fair.
um,
I I do think there's an opportunity for more than two center mids to be starting for Nashville SC as well this season, and I think that's something
yeah,
we cannot sort of forget about. So if there are two midfielders, if there are three midfielders starting, if we were to assume that for a minute, you need at least six in that position, right? And
yeah,
in terms of players who are covering grounds and making tackles and progressing the ball, Nashville SC have Patrick Kasbach, they have Eddie Taxeth, they have Brian Acosta, right? Let's just say those three are in one category. The other category is the Matt Corcoran what was Gaston Brugman's side. And this is not binary, right? Like these players can do both at times. Like Eddie
Yeah.
Texas progressed the
It
ball.
wouldn't surprise me if we see Hani in that type of role,
Right,
or
right. Like
Espinosa in that type of role, or Alex Muyl back in center midfield where he used to
I
play.
I'm actually expecting Alex Muyl to do that, to be in that Matt
Yeah.
Cochran role that he had at the end of the season. If you remember, I think it was against Miami. That kind of like center mid, left mid hybrid thing that he was doing, I think was working really well. So that said, just on a numbers perspective, I think there's a room for one more. I don't know if this person is getting it. Actually, I'll tell you, I really do not expect that person to be in the Gaston Brugman bracket. I think it's probably somebody who's closer to than Matt Corcoran, maybe somebody who's more minutes ready than Matt Corcoran, who will be, with a little bit of MLS experience, who will be taking on that creator role. And I think what ideally would be for Nashville SC is to assess the game, assess the opponent, and be able to go against this opponent. We want this creator in with one of the destroyers or with one of the guys who covers a lot of ground. In other games, you don't need that creator. Maybe Hani Mukhtar drops. Maybe Espinoza drops. So I think it's just given Nashville opportunities to play in different ways. And that's why I think they will target another midfielder. And I think the fullbacks is the main issue, not issue, the main need, but the midfielder is a close second for me.
I think that I I agree, but the reason why the fullback to me is the most alarming is because I think at every other position other than fullback, you can make an argument for someone who isn't starting to start. Whether that's the circumstances of the game, who they're playing, the opponent, whatever it is. There's really no argument ever for Josh Bauer to start over Andy Nahar that isn't related to injury.
That's true.
He is not a starting caliber fullback. He's a very good, versatile defensive player that every team would be improved by having in their group of defenders. I'm very high on Josh Bauer as a squad player. I think that every team would love to have that option. But if Nashville's going to compete to win silverware again this year, he can't be your backup fullback, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think another one. I think another one that I'm not worried about, but we haven't mentioned is the goalkeeper. Um, I feel pretty confident that both goalkeepers can do the job. Between Schwaki and Willis, it's a bit risky to just say Willis is going to be the backup. I don't know how Schwaki can feel safe to make mistakes if the longtime successful goalkeeper is the one behind him. And I am very high on Will. I think Willis is a great option. I don't have any issues with him, but I do worry if Schwaki goes through a bit of a poor patch somewhere
Mhm.
in the season about his confidence. And so much of goalkeeping comes down to confidence. It's like almost similar to a striker, right? Like if a striker goes through a patch where they're not scoring, it seems like they'll never score. And I do have some concerns there. I do think that having them both makes Nashville a better squad. But and I think Willis is cut out. He was a long time backup and then a great starter. I think this is nothing about him. It's just we haven't seen it from Schwaki really yet, other than the cup run, which was great. But it's an entirely different situation to be the starting goalkeeper for the whole season when the starter for the previous 6 years is your backup.
Yeah. Well, and I will say like one thing that BJ Callahan mentioned as something they want to work on this season is not only just changing the way they change plans within the game, like game phases, how they handle different game phases, but also he specifically mentioned getting distribution from the goalkeeper more often and working the goalkeeper more into those phases. He brought that up without anybody, well, some people asked him about Joe Willis and everything, but overall, that was something he brought up as an improvement for this season. And maybe they're looking at Schwaki as somebody who's more comfortable doing that than Joe Willis. He had a little bit of a hairy situation, maybe once or twice in that cup run. But that does show you that he is willing to take that risk that I think Joe Willis has struggled a lot to take, and credit to him because he has been a lot more open to play with his feet the last two seasons. But at the end of the day, you're looking at a younger guy who, again, is wanting to prove himself and maybe is more willing a little bit to take that risk than a secure guy who, makes sure to do everything as safely as possible. Nothing wrong with both
All
approaches.
right.
It's just going to be coach's preference here, really.
All right. So we're both, we're kind of, I think we're pretty clear on the things that we want to see happen next. I do think that this is an interesting overarching point that you're kind of alluding to there. Largely what we've seen so far from BJ, there was a decent amount of squad turnover last year. There's a little bit more this year. Is we've seen a lot of him fitting players into his system in a way that makes sense. Like Joe Willis is not the type of goalkeeper he wanted,
Right.
which is what we said whenever he wasn't retained. So that wasn't surprising. Obviously they've taken one of the DP slots out of the center back spot and put it further upfield. I don't think that enough people have given Callahan credit for instilling a system with existing players without a whole lot of turnover. At this point, there's been a lot of turnover in 2 years, but there hasn't been a lot of year-over-year turnover the last two off seasons. So it's a thing that I'm kind of stating the obvious, but I do think he's been here and two of the three DPS have been the same the
Yeah.
whole time, which you won't find happen. And I think if we're going to talk about the job that BJ has done as a coach, I think that is what stands out the most to me. And I just think it's an interesting thing to sit here and talk about how players fit into this system that have been around for a long time, like a Dan Lovitz. Dan Lovitz has been around since the very beginning of the MLS squad. So it's just there's not like some overarching point here. It's just something that I find continually interesting about squad construction here.
I think the overarching point here is that essentially Nashville SC, regardless of what happens in 2026, Nashville SC made the right decision hiring BJ Callahan at the end of 2024. I know that's like a large, broad point, but a
Yeah,
lot of people, including myself, were unsure about the move. I never hated the move. I thought it's worth it to explore this and give him a shot. But I would be lying to tell you at the end of 2024, I was expecting Nashville SC to win a trophy and have this sort of play on the pitch. I think we should
and
remember
he wasn't a guaranteed home run. Like he really
it
wasn't.
was
Like
not.
assistants from the national team are
Right.
not always successful in
Right.
MLS.
And I think we should remember what we were saying. I don't want this to get lost because Nashville found some success, all things considered in 2025. But early 2025, mid 2025, we were sitting there saying, this is ahead of time. This project is ahead of time. This project is ahead of time. And because of that, now we're looking at 2026 and the expectations have shot high up, both because of the signings they made and because of the on the field play. But let's not forget that this is still, I believe at least, is still ahead of time. The fact that there's a trophy for him, the fact that Nashville SC are going out and signing players that fit his system and are also proven goal scorers in MLS, goal creators in MLS, that's all ahead of time. I don't think I was, not that I don't think, I wasn't expecting all of this to happen this way. However, now it's, following the 2026 season, regardless of what happened, that fact is going to be forgotten. There's no project ahead of time. It's time to win, right? So I think BJ Callahan and Mike Jacobs know that very well. It's a result driven business. And look, bad seasons happen, things happen all the time. At the end of the day, what we can say equivocally is that all of us are sitting here saying, after Mike Jacob being on the hot seat, he has turned things around, made the right hire, brought in the right players for that hire, and that hire, who is BJ Callahan, has done tremendously with those players. And he has done tremendously with the players he inherited, right? And that's the overarching point, is that Nashville SC is on a trajectory that only few MLS teams are on currently.
And Nashville has made multiple international signings this offseason that people feel confident will be successful
Mm-hmm.
because they've now proven that they can sign guys from overseas while still doing the whole, get a big guy in the league. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of Nashville at the peak of the way they want to operate. The best domestic signings that you can get and taking good chances on the guys that you sign from overseas. So that being said, preseason has started. There's a preseason schedule. I honestly couldn't begin to care about any of these preseason games.
Let me
I just I'm just being very honest.
so
They exist for a reason, but
so four of the total 6 games are in Palm Beach, Florida. That's gonna be most likely behind closed doors. We'll get videos of the goals and we'll post them for y'all. And then you'll have one game in Birmingham in between those four that are in Palm Beach, Florida, against Birmingham Legion of USL. The four in Florida are Chicago, Colorado, an opponent to be announced, and Columbus Crew. It might be Orlando. That was one of the rumors I saw. And then the last game to end the preseason is against Lexington in Nashville. Hasn't been confirmed whether or not that will be at Geodis Park. It also hasn't been confirmed whether or not that be open to the public in any way. Um, there's a chance it will be. There's a chance it won't be. That we don't know at the moment. Last year, I'll tell you what. Last year they did play it at Geodis Park and they opened it to season ticket members and they were able to bring in other people with them. So we don't know if that's going to be the same this season, but 6 preseason games, like I said, it truly doesn't matter, but it's good for some hype and some Twitter game following on Twitter. That's the max of it.
And speaking of games at Geodis, there was one more announced event at Geodis coming in March. The She Believes Cup is returning to Geodis Park. Canada will play Colombia, and the U.S. will play Argentina. I mean, they love bringing women's soccer team to Nashville. They always have, going back now, 15, 20 years, I guess 20 years at this point since the first women's team played in Nashville, the first time a women's team played in Nashville. Uh, there is probably some reasoning behind that. Obviously, there's a lot of movement for Nashville to have a professional women's team, and that is seemingly a topic that comes up every single press conference whenever the U.S. women's national team plays in Nashville. So, hopefully there'll be some more movement on some of the bids that have happened over the past few years around potential Nashville teams. Honestly, it's the She Believes Cup. It's important, but it's also kind of a friendly tournament, and it's a good time. And I hope that everyone who can go will go and support women's soccer at the highest level.
Yeah, the last time they were here, I didn't. Well, the last time the women's team was here, it wasn't a doubleheader. It was just one game. But the one before that was
Mm-hmm.
a doubleheader, and I've
Yeah.
went to both as a fan and had a great time. And the double headers are really fun if you can get into one of the, what do you call them, like special seats, I guess, that have
Club
maybe
seats.
unlimited foods or drink or anything like that, because you'll enjoy yourself regardless of what's happening in the match. But
As someone who was working that doubleheader with my wife, I can attest that everyone that was there with Valair was having a great time. I don't know how much some of them remember what happened on the pitch in both of those games, but I can attest that they remember that they had a great time.
that's true. I also want to say that, like, on the pitch, away from all that stuff, you're also getting a chance to see uh, top teams. Canada and the US are amongst the best in the world. I'm not very familiar with Colombia and Argentina, but again, you'll see players who are playing in at the top level of the game. Obviously, the United States women's national team has a huge reputation, and it's always good to support soccer. Always good to support women's sports as well. But it's not like, oh, you have to go and as a it's good soccer being played, even though it's a friendly. It's a good match to
Yeah,
watch, and you get to watch soccer, which is fun. It's in March. Chances are it'll be nice outside, hopefully. So yeah, highly recommended. I recommend everybody
I think
go there.
I think it is quite bold of Valair just to assume that a game in March will be nice outside. I think given Nashville's weather challenges of February and March year in and year out, I would pump the brakes a little bit on that.
I
But
just realized it's
in
March
terms of
1st,
supporting,
which does not help my cause here.
yeah, but 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 all weather is good weather to support women's soccer at its highest form. So please go out and do that. That being said, I think for a Clay and Valair episode, this is wrapping up pretty quick, but we've gone a little longer than expected. So before we leave, I guess we don't really have any predictions, but Valair, anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah, so please go to 615soccer.com. It's your source of everything Nashville SC. Supporting that, signing up for that, it's a easy membership, $3 or $7 a month. That's all we're asking, and you get an incredible amount of content, but also you get access to our Discord community, which I know I've talked about a million times, but it's the best thing. It's so nice to have people to talk to about all these different things about soccer, even non-soccer things. So head to 615soccer.com and sign up. That's how you support this show directly. That's how you support independent media in Nashville directly. It's very important. And then also, if you want, for me personally, go make sure to follow at Valair Shabila wherever on socials. I'm working with the Kickback folks on some World Cup stuff. Some of it has already been released. More is going to be released soon. So doing non-Nashville things as well as a lot of Nashville things, like being at the press conference yesterday. So make sure you're following along 615 Soccer and Valair Shabila.
So you can follow me at Clay La Soul on Instagram or Twitter. You can also check out the National Soccer Archive. If you have anything you would like to donate to the National Soccer Archive, physical, digital, whatever it may be, if you think it's important to Nashville soccer's history, please let me know, and I can find a way to get it into our archive at Vanderbilt. So just reach out to me on those. Also, I'd like to say the Discord, I'm not fully in it as some other people are, but if you're ever bored, someone will be there to help you pass the time in the Discord. Because I'm telling you, I was pretty sick about a week ago, and I would have sleeping weird hours. And I got up in the morning, and there was a full blown conversation happening at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I was like, "You guys gotta settle down. It is January." So, so shout out to everyone in the Discord, of course. And if you want to get a Pharma Soccer t-shirt, it's a good season to get those because the season's starting up here in a month. Go to pharmasoccer.com. We've got some gear for you there. We always love running into people, but we especially love running into people when they're wearing our merch. So go check that out.
Yep.
Anything to add, Valair? I
I
think
was
we're
gonna
good.
say yup. Yeah, no, thank
Perfect.
you for allowing us to do this for another year. We're very happy to be here. I forgot to say Happy New Year on my solo episode that I did about Christian Espinosa last week. So Happy New Year to everybody listening.
It is insane how many years we've been doing this.
I don't want to think about it. Just move on.
Yeah, let's move on. Let's move on to next episode. Thanks for listening, y'all.